Well, we're doing this Massena Village Board meeting very different today due to the coronavirus. So I'm not allowed to film at the town hall along with the general media. So we're doing it on webcam today, filming the village meeting, and I've been invited. I'm happy the village and the mayor has invited me to this meeting because I've been filming meetings for over a decade now, and we need to get the news out, and we'll see how this works. It's just going to be weird filming here in my kitchen on my laptop the village board meeting.
Okay. Johnny, you taking my picture?
Herb,
Hello.
how you doing?
I'm getting ready to get on TV.
You're gonna be famous.
Okay, amen.
No. How do I do that? Right here?
That's just whatever that is. So the board meeting, I'll be on it downstairs.
Keep your phone handy.
What's that?
Button up and down. Huh? The mic is hot, so I can hear you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Right.
of the States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Good evening, everyone. I call the March 31st, 2020 special meeting of the Village Board of Trustees to order. Roll call, Mr. Levere.
Here.
Mr. Deshays.
Here.
Mr. Deshays is joining us via Zoom. Mr. Carvel.
Here.
Ms. Winston.
Here.
Entertain a motion to dispense with the regular agenda for the purpose of conducting a special meeting to conduct the budget for the 2021 Village of Massena.
So move.
Mr. Levere.
Second.
Second by Mr. Carvel. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Folks, thank you for your patience with us. This is the first time we have conducted a Zoom meeting. As you can see from your camera, we are practicing social distance. I never miss an opportunity these days to remind people to please exercise social distance. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing for the budget hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Carvel.
Second.
Second by Mr. Deshays, Mr. Levere. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. A few items to go over with, then we will open it up to public discussion and then to trustees' discussions. So the 2021 proposed budget currently comes in at a tax levy increase of 1.69% as presented last month to the clerk. The tax rate per thousand is $16.61. That represents a 20 cents per thousand increase in the tax levy. So if you had a house that was valued at $100,000, that would be a $20 increase in your village taxes. Unassigned fund balance right now, without applying any of out of it, was $2,016,000. Media will be happy to send the PowerPoint to you. General fund, revenue versus expenses. The expenses, $9,830,519. 9830519. Expenses, 9580519. I'm sorry, revenues. That's $250,000 shortfall. Identically matches up with the money that I've allocated from the fund balance. Breakdown, as always, shows our expenses. Next slide is the same way, shows which department. It's no secret 78% of our budget is directly related to personnel cost and employee benefits. For the first time in 5 years, the taxable assessed value of property has gone up in the village. First time in 5 years. Quickly on the state budget. The state budget is absolutely an unknown for obvious reasons. I haven't seen the news today. I was told the state would be considering passing some type of spending bill to allocate funds, and then they'd be dealing with the budget going forward. The state budget is due tomorrow. The legislature has not been able to meet and do a lot of things they would normally do in anticipation of the budget. So we do not know where that is. The governor's proposed budget provided us with $132,671 of AIM funding, which is aid and incentives to municipalities received for several years at that same number. His budget provided a combined $270,000 both in consolidated highway funding and Pave New York funding. He did not, the governor in his budget, include any money in the extreme Winter Road line. That was the same last year. Legislature eventually through the deal came through with that. So again, we don't know because of the budget deliberation status and the emergency spending bill that they're anticipating passing, where any of that is going to go right now. highlight a few of the changes that I've made that are significant changes that you should be considering as you're looking at this. I have reduced the Business Development Corporation funding from $45,000 last year to $5,000 this year. Reduced the chamber funding from $21,500 to $5,000. If you look at the numbers in front of you, the general fund, so the department request totaled $10,316,252. The $10.3 million. My allocation is 9.830519, so 9,830,519. I've applied $250,000 of the fund balance the budget for your interest. So the tax cap, based on the calculations from the state, basically had $99,141 of potential increase in that fund to stay below. So that's how tight it was to stay below the tax cap, which we currently are. A couple of other discussions for you. So as you recall, we recently, last fall, received the official report from the local government reorganization study. At the end of that study, they made primarily, well, a few recommendations, but three things came to mind. One was the Public Works Department and the Highway Department to look at a couple of opportunities there. First and foremost, they recommended that if the town highway proceeds to build a new facility or renovate their current one, we should look at a potential partnership with a shared facility, and then potentially in the long term looking at the potential merger of those two departments, Public Works and Highway Department. We have expressed certainly our willingness, I should say, to the town to discuss that. I don't know where that will ever go. The second recommendation, one of the second recommendations came for that was executive leadership within the village. And the final was looking at the village and town courts. So two of those I would like to look at us addressing this year. First is the administration position, the executive leadership position, which I'll cover in just a minute. And the second is the village and town court. Because of the uniqueness of this village, which has prevented us from doing other things when it comes to reorganization of local government, merging the town and village court really isn't possible because of the town of Louisville and those types of things. So the likely best path forward with regard to that would be to dissolve the village court completely, and then just rely on the two townships to handle courts within the village. So the town of Louisville would have a portion of it, and the town of Massena Court would have this significant portion of administering the justice locally with our courts. The treasurer and I have looked at initial numbers. We haven't went through the NICOM formula to look at every piece of things, but it's pretty easy for the treasurer to get into his numbers and look at a snapshot. You could be looking at a $60,000 to say $80,000 savings, probably closer to 70 as we see annually if we were to dissolve the village. The way the dissolution works with the village, you can only dissolve a village court at the end of a justice's term. So that would be 2022 that we could do it. So, and I'd be asking you to look at that, think about that. I think in fairness to everyone involved, I would like to sit the parties down, the judges, court employees. Let's look at the numbers, see what the impact is. I recognize that village court in Massena is very likely the busiest court in the county. So we should look at that and make sure it's not just a financial impact. We should have discussions with the town. But we have gotten to the point where it's very difficult to do anything to save money anymore. We've been through this several times. I know Trustee Deshays and Trustee Carvel have been doing this budget longer than I have. And it is a challenge to find savings anywhere. So given those recommendations in my budget, I am proposing the creation of an administrative position. What I am proposing is elevating the current clerk to a clerk/administrator position, and then the hiring of a part-time deputy clerk to backfill those duties that she would not be able to cover. That would give us administrative duties. There's a number of areas that we have identified that the clerk/administrator could be responsible for. Human resources, some of the insurance things that we're dealing with, training, which is always seems to fall through the crack when it comes to those annual administrative training that has to happen, such as sexual harassment and those types of things. And really charging her with the responsibility of looking at that study, seeing how we can implement what's left, and then looking at every position. Every time an opening comes up in this village, we do a good job, I think, of asking questions, but do we really look at it and analyze it to see what the long-term effects are, whether we fill a position or not? And certainly the creation of somebody that would be responsible for that would benefit all of us. So roughly, if you look at what I reduced in those bigger numbers, we reduced about 56,500, and it would add about 36,476 to it. So there's still quite a net savings from doing that. And eventually, if we led to reducing or getting rid of the village court, we would have done 2 of the 3 things that are recommended in that study that we have control over. We don't control what the town does. So with respect to the numbers, the general fund, I'm not going to read through all of these, but the general fund is 9,830,519. And for total, when you take the waste and refuse, water fund, sewer fund, debt service, capital projects, special grants in the community center, the overall budget for the village is $15,913,615. Overall, that represents a 3.7% decrease overall, and a slight increase of 1.66% in the general fund. So I certainly, as always, I thank you mostly to the treasurer, who does the lion's share of the work. It certainly is a pleasure to work for, and I ask for information, I get it immediately. It's always good. So Kevin, thank you. And all of the department heads and all of our partners that work through this. I sent out earlier this map and to see it in color, but the top line is the expenses, and our expenses continue to go up, and I don't see anything changing that. Expenses going up, revenues not keeping pace. I don't know what we do the next 5 or 10 years. Every time we look at something, we hit a roadblock. Every time we think of a good idea, we hit a roadblock. Whether it's out of our control or not, whether it's in our control or not, it just seems to be there's roadblocks. I wish there were easy answers, but all I find myself doing when I present you with a budget is cutting equipment that is needed. Some equipment is a wish list, but by and large, our department heads don't create wish lists. They create budgets that are based upon their needs, our short and long-term needs. With respect to police and fire, it's what are our public safety needs? What equipment do our officers and firefighters and career firefighters need? Same thing with public works. We have equipment that's aging. And when we cut these new pieces of equipment out because we can't afford them, we see our expenses go up in the area of repairing them. And certainly there's lost time when the equipment fails. I guess my point, which continues to be, and I know I seem to be saying it every year now, is I don't know what's left. We're down to people. We learned last year, just when we cut a couple of services, people call us, they want those services back. So I don't know what the balance is anymore, other than to continue to do what we're doing. And I don't know, at some point, we're going to run out of enough revenue to continue to do what we're doing and provide the services that we do. With that, this is a public hearing. I'd be happy to take questions. So if you'll have to unmute yourself, I believe it's in the top right of your screen.
Depends what you're using.
What's that?
It depends what you're using. It's bottom left for me.
Okay, could be on the bottom left also.
If you're having trouble unmuting yourself, just type in the chat and let us know. There's a question in the chat.
Why is the chamber getting funding cut?
Who's the question?
The question is from Massena Chamber staff. Can you identify yourself, Massena Chamber staff, please? Dave from the Massena Chamber is asking, why is the chamber getting funding cut?
My primary thing, and listen, I'm a fan of the chamber. I like what the chamber does. My primary reason for making that cut is looking at the recommendations that came back from the reorganization study, being able to implement those, and then looking at the duplication of funding that is occurring in some places in this community, and the chamber is one of them. The town of Massena gets gaming compact money from the casino, more than $600,000. 8 of 10 people that live within the village of Massena live in the town of Massena. So as we fund the chamber and the town funds the chamber, and excuse me, in my view, somebody that is a village resident is actually funding the chamber twice. Our money only comes from taxes that we can spend on this stuff. So trying to shrink what our expenses are, finding a way to keep our services, and continue to do what we're doing. Further questions?
Just follow up. The town has not approved our funding at all yet this year.
Understood. Further questions? Just want to give this ample time so somebody who's either struggling to find the mute button or type, I want to make sure people have an opportunity to discuss, so please forgive the patience.
Do you want me to unmute them all?
Sure. We've gone ahead and unmuted everyone. If someone wants to jump in.
Again, all mics are muted. So please comment your questions. If you could say your name and speak them, that would be very much appreciated.
Okay.
Chamber said we have done a lot this year for the town and village between the HGT COVID-19 resources page.
I absolutely do not dispute the service that is provided by the. So hearing no other, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Mr. LeBeer.
Second.
Ms. Winston, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Herb gave a mouth of an eye. In the event that trustees take action to modify the mayor's budget and it goes over the tax cap, we do have to have a public hearing on the tax cap. So I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing for the 2% tax cap override.
So move.
Mr. LeBeer.
Second.
Mr. Carville, discussion? All those in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is open on the tax cap only. I would entertain public comment on the 2% tax cap override only, please. And also I would remind you that currently the proposed budget that I have presented is below the state tax cap, and the override is only open. The hearing is only open in the event that we have to vote. So again, trustees, just to remind you, you would do your budget work. If you were to make budget changes that put us over the tax cap, then before we adopted the final budget, you would have to vote to officially override the 2% tax cap for the state. We could either at the end of this, we could close that hearing, or if we don't take any action, the hearing just kind of goes away. So we only have to take further action on this in the event that you make changes that put us over the tax cap. That being said, again, I would open it up to public comment. Once again, limiting it only to the 2% tax cap override. And we'll give it a couple minutes in case anyone might be typing something or trying to get in. Okay, we're just going to move on. We will leave that hearing open in the event that it's necessary, that action needs to be taken. Trustees, it's all yours. I would remind you that my budget has been presented to the clerk, so it would take 3 votes from this body to modify my budget. So it would take 3 votes to modify the budget. If those votes don't exist, then the budget that has been presented would become law.
I think you summed it up nicely. No one likes to see cuts to anything in the budget, whether it be organization, whether it be equipment. But the reality is, with what we're looking at, tough choices have to be made. And certainly the feedback that I get from everyone is they don't want us going over a tax cap. They want tax increases held to a minimum necessary. So I'm not inclined to see any significant changes. I got some smaller things that I'll discuss in a bit, but it was a tough task, so I applaud the way you tackled it. It's a tough time, and I think the next year, in particular with the COVID-19 crisis, it's a huge unknown. I mean, everything from state funding, the sales tax, to impact on the economy. We have to be extremely cautious, and I appreciate that you did that with this. So it's good.
Yes, with the budget, I noticed that you, for sales tax, is that a reasonable figure as far as with what's going on? I mean, I know people are they buying right now, are they buying essentials, more food, are they buying, and how do you think the sales tax is going to be?
Yeah, I think I'll just answer from the treasurer and I discussed this a lot, particularly the last few weeks, even after, my budget was originally submitted, and it's really a crapshoot. I've spoken with the county chairman, legislative chairman also on it. It's really an unknown. That's a great question. I can let the treasurer jump in if he wants to he's very comfortable with that number based upon history and where we were going.
Well, that's the only thing. I'm just a little concerned because I don't, I know you looked at it very,
So one association attempted to do the first modeling of that. Something that us data analysts love to do is modeling. And their model had a rather wide range, which I kind of chuckled at because it was so wide, it was useless in my opinion. I appreciated their efforts, but it was like, it might be this or it might be this. The huge unknown is going to be the rebound. I mean, I think we all know it's going to be catastrophic, for the quarter, maybe even a second quarter that COVID-19 goes into. The huge unknown is the rebound. When everything is back to normal, what is everyone doing after that? Does it offset the negative? Wish I knew. I wish my 401k knew.
And the other one was the 250,000 you took out of the unappropriated fund balance. Some people may say we have a high unappropriated fund balance, but I don't believe that's so. And a prime example is what happened in Watertown just recently. They thought they had a lot of fund balance, took $1.5 million and built a pool with it. Now, all of a sudden, they're behind the 8 ball. They're really in financial straits right now because now they could use that fund balance. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I've never understood the whole your fund balance is stable, so why don't you spend more argument. You don't wait until you're unstable to stop spending what you don't have.
Well, I think it's good to have that because, especially this year, because we don't know the unknowns, how long this is going to last, what effect it's going to have. So it's good to keep that. So other than that, I don't have any. It's a tough budget. I definitely can applaud the mayor for going through and making some tough cuts. Nobody likes to see anything cut, but tough times require tough decisions, and so.
Trustees, I do have one proposal I'd like to make in regards to some budget changes. I'll start from the bottom up of my proposal. The net impact on the budget of what I'm about to propose is zero. It's more of a shuffling of budget lines to accomplish a couple of different things. So what I'm looking at is a reduction of 7 different lines in the mayor's budget. They are personnel-related street maintenance, snow removal, parks, storm sewers, street cleaning, health, dental, vision. I provided the treasurer a copy of this. It's 8,500 in street maintenance personnel, 8,500 in snow removal, 1,125 in parks, 4,250 in storm sewers, 4,250 in street cleaning, and then another 19,333 and 1967 in fringe costs. Where I came up with those numbers is if you look, we just recently had a retirement, we had another retirement. There's a process to filling appointments, and it's not immediate. We typically don't have someone retire or leave and then it's filled the very next day. So when there's openings, there's delays, there's a process that goes on. So I did some math and with the assistance of the treasurer and the superintendent to see how much that cumulative impact could be under different scenarios, and went with a very conservative one. And it freed up, if we reduce those lines that I just stated, 47,925. Then I went back and looked at some of the things that were cut in that area that were really, really important. And the 2 that stood out to me were street paving. One thing we probably get some of the most feedback on is the roads. And we do the best we can with the time we have and the money we have. But if we could get the roads back up another 22,000, that's another street project that is in the plan that they would be able to do. And then the other item is a sidewalk plow. Sidewalk plows in 1997. I can tell you last winter, we received multiple comments and contacts from DPW. It has issues. Fumes, exhaust, it's going to need to be serviced. It's 27 years old. Time is probably really ticking on it. So we could bond that out. The bond estimate I have in there is about 22,000. That offsets perfectly with the reduction. That's why I put those 2 against it that way. So it would be a net impact on the budget and the tax levy and the rate of 0, but it would be shuffling around of things to allow for another street to be paved and for the snow sidewalk plow to be purchased. So I'd like to propose that, put that to you for your consideration.
One question on that. How do you think that's going to affect each budget, each line item?
In terms of the amounts?
Yeah, how, like with street cleaning or storm sewers or.
Yep, those are the specific amounts they'd go down by. So it's not, when you look at the total of the budget line, it looks very insignificant, but it's the accumulation of it all that adds up to just enough to be able to do those 2 things. It's really not I don't want to say it's not significant. You know, it's equivalent to a couple of positions, you know, being delayed 2, 3, 4 months. Which when you look at our meeting cycle, when you look at the way retirements fall, it's often the case that it's 1 or 2 months anyways. So we're not talking any major reduction in this scenario. Obviously, any hire is subject to board discussion and approval. So, you know, I'm not proposing anything specific. I was just looking at reasonable shaving of those payroll lines to enable another expense to be allocated.
Does having the sidewalk plow save on overtime? Does it make it more efficient?
I don't think it'll impact that. It comes down to what the mayor said. There's an expectation of services.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this is the tough conversation for not just the board, but for our community as a whole. Of what services do we continue to offer? What services do we continue to provide? And how do we pay for it? This is just, honestly, just a crystal ball approach on can we potentially save, you know, on these lines to offset this expense. You know, I think it's very achievable. Hence my proposal. I don't think there will be any significant savings in terms of overtime, but there will certainly be savings in terms of maintenance. Because like I said, if we don't get the sidewalk plow, we either are plowing less sidewalks or we're sending it for repair, because we can't have the employees using equipment that's not adequate. So, what's that?
I think I drove.
I'm not going to comment on what that says about the age of that machine. But yes, exactly.
Is that a proposal, or is that a
That's a motion, yep.
motion? I'll second that motion.
Kevin made a comment. Just a reminder that Matt's proposal to delay filling the position for 4 months won't allow it to start until October, 4 months from June 1.
Treasurer, it's a budget adjustment, so it doesn't actually dictate the exact timing of what position and when. It's the budget that we need to meet for the year. So I'm not following how that would dictate the exact position being required to be held until a certain time.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, just in our discussion this afternoon, we were talking about the few months of holding off on it, that just to make sure that it's not, you're not counting starting now for those 4 months, because the budget's not going to take effect until June 1st. So I just want to remind it that if you're thinking about holding off for a few months, it's from the June 1st start, not starting now.
Correct. And again, that's just a scenario. We have multiple hiring activity typically during a year. So we're not speaking to any one particular position per se. It's just a reminder that we need to have some savings as positions come up or are currently up.
Yeah.
Are there other proposed changes? So I guess my point is, there's two ways you can do this. You can straw poll it right now and save it till the end for the final budget, or if you wanted to vote individually on individual as you keep going, that's fine too. Trustee DeShays, do you have anything?
No, sounds good to me, Mayor. Everything looks good. As long as you keep it below 2%, I'm for it. Have been here since day one.
Again, you kept it under the tax cap and you cut, where you absolutely could, and taking into account, we don't know where things will be. It's important to keep it under, so it's good to me.
One motion.
Why don't we just, if he wants anything else first, and then we could
Oh,
just
okay.
wrap it all into one final vote.
What equipment was left in the budget?
Oh, that's a tough question. Which department?
Police had what, 2 cars in? Are they gonna-
There's no cars in the police budget.
Okay.
No, there's, the police budget has, there's a radio transmission issue, so there's some equipment in there to solve that issue.
And general fund.
Further discussion? So do you wish to propose those changes?
I do.
And you want to do those individually, or you just want to wrap those into the,
Wrap
that's
those
in the entire budget? So I would entertain the motion. It sounds like a motion from Mr. LeBeer, the changes that he just outlined to you to include in the final budget. And he's proposing that motion to pass the budget.
So move.
Second by Mr. Carvel. Discussion? So we're clear, Mr. Felt, that's a zero impact, so we're still at 1.66%.
Correct. Yeah, that doesn't change anything with the tax levy.
So we have a motion by Mr. Rivera, second by Mr. Carvel. Discussion? Just pull individually.
For the final, the total budget is a resolution.
Yeah. So this is a resolution. We will poll individually. Mr. LeBeer,
Aye.
Mr. Deshays,
Aye.
Mr. Carvel,
Aye.
Ms. Winston.
Aye.
Resolution carries. Just for housekeeping purposes, I'd entertain a motion to close the 2% tax cap hearing.
So moved.
Mr. LeBeer, second by Mr. Carvel. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Before we close, I want to reiterate the cuts, and I can't make this any more clear. The cuts that I've recommended and now have been adopted with the Business Development Corporation and the Chamber are no reflection to the relationship that we have or the things that they're doing. What I have believed is we have to pull back the village, focus completely on community development and infrastructure and those types of things, and leave some of those other things to the town, particularly since the money that they receive from the compact money is somewhat designed for that. I think that's fair to the village taxpayers who pay both village taxes and town taxes. To the media, I'd be happy to open it up to questions. How about Bob? Bob, you have any?
He's good.
I'm good.
Thank you. Andy, are you there? You're good? Other media on there, right?
John.
So with that, I would entertain a motion to close. Somewhere adjourn, I'm sorry. Mr. LeBeer, second by Mr. Carvel. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We're adjourned.
Stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy. Thank you.
This budget is done.
We're done. You guys get a minute. I want to show you that map.
This Massena political meeting was sponsored by An Italian Affair, located at 339 East Ory Street in Massena. Italian pizza and pasta at its finest. You can visit their website at anitalianaffair.com or phone them for takeout deliveries at 315-764-9829. Again, 315-764-9829. Italian pizza and pasta at its finest here in Massena.